Hi, I'm Veronica. Welcome to my channel. I would like to show you today a simple movement that helps you to really bring some smoothness and ease of movement for your pelvis, for your legs. This practice can be particularly useful if you feel tight or blocked somewhere within the pelvis. If you're, for example, struggling with sitting on the ground, sitting cross-legged, um, and it's best done on a surface where you can easily slide your leg. So you might want to do it wearing a sock over a wooden floor, or maybe with bare feet over carpet or something like that. The version of the practice I'm going to show you is done lying down. However, you can do exactly the same in a seated position as well. So for large part of the population, lying down is going to be a little bit more relaxing than being seated. But I can imagine that for some people the opposite will be true. So please remember you can do exactly the same movement while you are seated and with your feet on the ground. And please make sure that your surface is slidey enough. So if you're using a yoga mat, for example, a sticky yoga mat is the least slidey surface you can imagine. So if you are going to use the yoga mat, make sure that you have one half of your body outside of it, so that your leg can slide, whether it's on the wooden floor or on the carpeted floor. So let's begin by making the way down and maybe making some little movements, rocking, rolling, massaging against the floor. And once you feel that this has been enough for you, and it really can take anything from 1 minute to 5 minutes, that's that process. You can settle in constructive rest. That's the position when you have your knees bent and feet on the mat. Your arms are resting wherever they can comfortably rest on the ground. And this is a kind of place where um, you really want the body weight to sink down into the ground. So you're giving your weight down to the earth, and it's relaxing enough so that there's no tension or engagement in your leg muscles or in the groin or in the belly. So it's a really restful position. This is our starting point. And we're going to layer the movements, which means that we start with simpler movements and then gradually add a little bit on top of that. It always works really well to first feel how is the body at this moment, or the meeting points between the body and the floor, so that later you can compare it with after the practice. It's also a good idea to start doing all the movements on one side so that you can have a good comparison between the sides before you go to the other side. So the first thing we're going to do, once you found that comfortable place for your feet to land, is to start externally rotating your leg. So basically moving your leg out in space. And it might seem like a pretty straightforward movement, but I would like you to pay attention to a couple of things. So actually, you can initiate this movement in a couple of ways. The one that is kind of most common or most obvious is moving your knee out to the side. However, you could also think of it as rolling onto outer edge of your foot. And it might feel slightly different if your focus is in the foot rather than in the knee. You could also think of it as your thigh bone moving out in space. And this is the movement that is limited to that one half of the pelvis. So what I could do is to let the other leg follow it, let the entire pelvis to follow this movement. That's not what I'm doing today. It's obviously you can do it, and there's nothing wrong about it. It's just that currently we are focusing on a slightly different thing. So what we're looking at is how your thigh bone moves in a hip socket and how you can really um, keep the right and the left half of the pelvis kind of independent of one another. You could add the breath to that, and I don't really like prescribing it, so you might find that it works better for you to move the leg out when you inhale and bring it back when you exhale. But if the opposite is true for you, that's fine as well. It's always a good idea to synchronize the movement with the breath. If it's kind of too much for you to think about, don't worry about it. So long as you keep breathing, it's fine. Another thing is that the main focus in somatics is on making the movement really fluid, steady, and easy. So you're not trying to reach anywhere. It's not a stretch. It's not that you're trying to touch the ground with the knee or anything like that. You're going to your comfortable range of motion, and then you're returning to the initial position. So there's no reaching, no pushing, no stretching. And the awareness really stays on that movement so that you can notice any moment where maybe you're almost as if you're skipping a part, like you're like suddenly kind of jumping, skipping one part of that movement. So if you notice anything like that, see if you could go through it a little bit slower next time so that it doesn't skip any part, so that it's more smooth. Now, the next time the leg is out, you can keep it like that. So the other leg doesn't move at all. It's all the time with the foot on the ground and knee pointing up. The rest of the body is relaxed. It doesn't help you in that movement at all. And from here, you're going to add that second movement. So again, if you feel that you're too much on the mat, you could move outside of the mat onto that sliding surface. So that is going to be easy for you, as we're not lifting anything. We're using the minimal effort. In this case, that means sliding your foot away from you down to the mat. So your heel will be sliding away until the leg is long and relaxed on the floor. Now you could add to that this kind of external rotation. For me, it happens kind of naturally, but you can add that external rotation of the leg before you return. So you return by bending the knee or by bringing the heel, gradually sliding it along the floor so that it comes closer and closer towards your pelvis. And then eventually you step your entire sole of the foot on the ground, and he is pointing to the ceiling again. So you decide whether you want to use the inhale or exhale to move that leg out. Once it's out to that comfortable place and it doesn't pull the other half of the pelvis with it, then you slowly slide that leg away from you until the leg is straight on the ground and it's completely relaxed. You're not tensing it up, it's just chilled. You might help it to rotate outwards, then bend the knee, slide that heel towards you. Once it's quite close towards you, step that foot on the ground, then knee points up. So just like with the previous movement, you're searching here for the movement that feels effortless and very smooth. and a place where it feels like you're overcoming a hurdle, or it feels a little bit like you're skipping some part, or maybe that feels a bit stuck or sticky or rusty. See if you can go slower through it. Mm. Give it some rest, and maybe even you want to relax for a moment with both legs long, so that you have a comparison of how that right hip and right leg is resting on the ground in comparison to the one right or left, whichever you work with, in comparison to that other side. So a little bit of a check before you continue with a slightly different movement. So this time you can have your feet wider apart, maybe even as wide as the mat. The left leg will be still bent exactly as it was, with the knee pointing up, and we still keep on working with that same side that we started with. And this time the movement is of rolling onto inner edge of the foot, or in other words, depending on what is going to be your initiation point of this movement, of bringing your knee inwards and crossing with the knee the central axis of your body. So basically you're going to internally rotate the leg. And most likely, you're going to feel quite clearly that one of these movements feels much easier and comfortable for you. That you have that natural tendency to either have to a larger range of movement for the external rotation or for the internal rotation. And that all depends actually on not just on your habits and what you did in your life, but also in how you're built, and how is your pelvic socket in space, oriented in space. So it's exactly the same thing. You're not reaching anywhere, you're not pushing anything, you're staying within your comfortable range of motion. You might even feel that your head wants to respond to it somehow. So if you feel that your head wants to roll in one direction as you make this movement, let that happen. And then we're going to add more complex movement to that. So you could begin with your leg long. Again, make sure that you have that easy sliding surface for the leg. And now purposefully rotate your leg internally, so the whole leg rotates around its own axis inwards. And then you're going to bend the knee. Now, if you bend the knee and start sliding the heel towards you, what is most likely going to happen is that that side of the pelvis will start lifting a little bit. But try to keep the other side of the pelvis just as it was, and the other leg just as it was. Now, it might be that that leg doesn't want to go very far. Again, don't get to the point where you're really pushing it and then some cramps appear. Let this leg slide wherever it wants to slide. It might be that your head naturally wants to turn in that direction, as if you wanted to see the sole of your foot. And then you slowly slide that leg away from you. So it's sliding, never lifting. And then it relaxes into that neutral position, whatever it is for it. So you're internally rotating the entire leg, starting from your thigh bone, and then bending the and slide that heel towards you, wherever it wants to go. The more sticky is the surface, obviously, the harder this movement will feel, the more work it will be. If you are in the socks on the wooden floor, it will feel the easiest. I already can feel a little bit of a resistance just because I do it barefoot rather than in the socks. And after you've done it a couple of times, again, you can lengthen the other leg, and one more time compare how that right side of the pelvis rests on the ground as compared to the left side of the pelvis. Maybe how is that one side of your lower back? How that leg rests on the ground? Maybe it feels more connected to the rest of the body. Maybe it feels more alive. Maybe it feels heavier or more spread out. Whatever it is for you, just give yourself time to really feel it. Stay in that felt sense. And then you can bend the knees, place the feet on the ground. So it's exactly the same movement on the other side, and then you always rest at the end of it. I'm not going to guide you through it, as you can simply follow, rewind it to the beginning and follow my guidelines. On that side, it's exactly the same thing. And in terms of how many repetitions, somatics doesn't really work that way that you do 5 times, or like you really have a specific amount of reps. It's not about this. It's more about really waiting until this movement becomes much more easy and flowing. And you don't really need to do it forever. Sometimes just a couple of times is going to be enough. I hope that you enjoyed this practice. If you noticed some big changes, you can share it in the comments below. And if you are here because you are currently struggling with pain, with some ongoing issue, and you would like some support in guiding you through that pain management, head to my website where you can download a free 12 minutes long audio first aid for pain. You can find it um, in this address, and I will link it also in the description below. I'll see you next time.